My manager told me to speak up, then wrote me up for being disruptive, and said I should be quiet and pretty. So I highlighted every policy violation and sent it to legal. When they heard Exhibit 17, everything changed instantly. I was sitting in a cramped conference room in our downtown Minneapolis office, watching my manager, Mark, turn pale as the company's legal counsel flipped through a thick, yellow-tabbed binder with my name on it. He looked like he wanted to bolt. Honestly, I wanted him too. He deserved to run. The lawyer tapped the table and said, "We're missing Exhibit 17. That's the audio recording of the February 12th staff meeting." Mark's face twitched. He whispered, We don't need that one. It's not relevant." But it was relevant. It was the whole reason we were all sitting here. It was the reason he was sweating through his shirt. It was the reason HR looked like they wanted to be anywhere else in the world. I sat as quietly as I could, because this was the first time in months that someone in this building wanted to hear my side of the story. And the truth was, I had been waiting for this moment since the night in my apartment when I opened our employee handbook, read it front to back until 3 a.m., and realized I could burn his entire scheme down using his own words. But right now, watching him melt under pressure, I almost felt calm. Almost. The lawyer turned to me. "Do you have a copy of Exhibit 17? The original file seems to be missing." I nodded. "Yes." I brought my own. Mark's head snapped toward me so fast I actually heard something crack. He had no idea I had a backup. He had no idea that I had backed up everything. My hands were steady as I placed a small USB drive on the table. This is the full, unedited recording of the meeting where Mark instructed me, and I quote, "to get over myself," when I raised a concern about workload distribution. It also includes his remark about needing to be quiet and pretty if I wanted to move up. HR inhaled sharply. The lawyer stopped flipping pages. "And Mark," he whispered, "you shouldn't have been recording." I looked straight at him. "You told me I needed to speak up more, remember? I wanted an accurate record." Before anyone could respond, the lawyer pressed a button on the intercom. Please bring in a laptop with secured audio review capability." Mark slammed his palm against the table. "This is ridiculous. She's blowing everything out of proportion." But no one was listening to him anymore. As we all waited for it to arrive, the air in the room grew thick and uncomfortable. I could feel every moment of the past 6 months building inside me like pressure behind a dam. Every insult disguised as feedback. Every time he cut me off. Every time he treated me like I didn't belong in that office unless I stayed small. The lawyer looked down at the binder again. "For the record," she said, "this arbitration was requested due to conflicting performance reviews, alleged discriminatory remarks, and documented inconsistencies in managerial conduct." Alleged, I thought. Not for long. I kept my hands folded so they wouldn't shake. I needed to stay steady because the truth was about to break open in a way he never expected. The door opened. It walked in with the laptop. Mark shut his eyes. Because he knew what was coming. He knew what was on that recording. He knew what he had said. And he knew, finally, that there was no talking his way out of it. The lawyer inserted the USB and said, "Let's play Exhibit 17. And that's when everything truly began to unravel. When I first started at Westline Analytics in Minneapolis, I actually thought I got lucky. The office was modern, the pay was decent, and everyone acted like they cared about transparency and growth. Mark, my future personal nightmare, seemed supportive at first. He told me on my first week, "We like people who speak up here. Don't be afraid to have a voice." I took him seriously. I'd worked in enough places where women were expected to nod and smile, so hearing someone encourage confidence felt like a breath of fresh air. But it didn't take long for that tone to change. It started small, little jabs, tiny corrections in front of others. If I made a suggestion in a meeting, he'd cut me off with, "Let's let the senior staff talk," even though I was senior staff. When a male coworker said the same thing I had just said, Mark praised him for being innovative. I tried brushing it off. I told myself he probably didn't realize he was doing it. I gave him the benefit of the doubt longer than I should have. But then came my first quarterly review. He handed me a report with "needs to speak up more" circled 3 times. I remember staring at it, thinking it had to be a joke. I said, "I do speak up. I've been trying to contribute." He smiled like I didn't understand something basic. "Yeah, but you need to speak up more strategically. Stay light, stay positive, be pleasant. Pleasant, like that was part of my job description. Still, I played along. I made myself speak up in meetings. I asked questions. I offered input. I did exactly what he demanded from me. And the more I spoke, the more irritated he got. He'd interrupt me mid-sentence with, "Okay, moving on." He'd roll his eyes when I brought data that contradicted his ideas. He once told a coworker, loud enough for me to hear, "She's trying too hard." I even overheard him mock the sound of my voice once. That one stuck with me. That one burrowed deep. By the time the next review cycle came around, I honestly couldn't predict how it would go. I tried to be hopeful. I thought maybe he'd realize I was actually contributing more and that he'd give me a fair evaluation. I was wrong. When I walked into his office, he shut the door dramatically and slid a performance report toward me. "This is serious," he said. "We need to course correct." In bold letters near the top, "Disruptive, aggressive. Needs to focus less on inserting herself and more on team cohesion." My stomach sank. I said, "You told me to speak up. I did exactly what you asked." He leaned back in his chair and gave me the most condescending smile I have ever seen. "If you want to succeed here, you need to learn how to be quiet and pretty. Men don't like feeling challenged." I froze. I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or laugh at how blatant he was being. He said it so casually, like it was perfectly acceptable workplace advice. Later that night, I sat in my tiny apartment staring at his review, feeling a level of anger I didn't even know I had. My hands were shaking. My face was hot. My whole body was buzzing with something between humiliation and rage. That's when I picked up the employee handbook. I read it start to finish. Every line, every contradiction, every policy he violated with his smug little comments. And by the time the sun came up, I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. Once I realized how many lines he'd crossed, something in me shifted. It wasn't fear anymore. It wasn't confusion. It was this sharp, cold determination I didn't even recognize at first. I wasn't going to let him twist my reality any longer. But things at work didn't magically pause just because I'd reached my breaking point. If anything, the tension doubled. The next week, Mark called me out in a team meeting, our Monday stand-up in the open office space, right next to the giant windows facing Nicollet Mall. Everyone was there. Everyone heard. We were reviewing workload distribution, which was already lopsided, and I calmly pointed out that 2 major client reports had been assigned to me even though I was already managing a full load. I wasn't rude. I wasn't emotional. I just stated a fact. Mark shot me this tight smile. "Maybe if you spent less time questioning my decisions and more time doing the work, we wouldn't have a problem." The room went still. A couple coworkers looked down at their screens. A few exchanged uncomfortable glances. I said, "I'm not questioning you. I'm asking for balanced distribution." He leaned forward in his chair. "Well, you sound questioning." There was something about the way he said, "sound," that made my skin crawl, like my existence bothered him. That was the moment I decided I was done playing nice. After the meeting, he pulled me aside and whispered, "You're coming off aggressive again. I'm trying to help you, but you're making it difficult." Help me. Right. That same day, I started recording any meeting where I was legally allowed to. Minnesota is a one-party consent state, so as long as I was part of the conversation, I could record. He didn't know. He didn't even consider that I'd protect myself because he assumed I'd always stay quiet. Over the next few weeks, his comments got worse. More dismissive, more personal, more confident that I wouldn't retaliate. One afternoon, in the kitchen while he thought we were alone, he said, "If you keep pushing like this, you're going to get a reputation. And then no one in this building will want to work with you, or hire you." I felt something snap inside me, and the mic on my phone caught every word. But the turning point, the moment everything spiraled from bad boss to "this man is dangerous," happened during a client call. We were on a Zoom with a Chicago partner, reviewing a proposal. Mark gave incorrect metrics, and I gently corrected them with the accurate numbers. The client thanked me, said it clarified everything. The second the call ended, he hissed, "What the hell was that?" I blinked. "I corrected the data so the client wasn't misled." He slammed his laptop shut. "You embarrassed me." I didn't raise my voice. I just said, "I provided accurate information." He stepped closer, lowered his voice, and said something I will never forget. "You don't correct me. You don't override me. Not ever. I'm your manager. Learn your place." My place. That word echoed through me for days. It was the first time I realized this wasn't just about sexism or ego or petty power plays. This was about control. He needed to dominate someone, and he chose me. And the more he sensed I wasn't staying small, wasn't staying pretty and quiet, the more vicious he became. The final straw came 2 days later, when HR emailed me asking to discuss several concerns raised about your communication style. Concerns. Raised by him, of course. He'd started building a paper trail. He was trying to get me pushed out. And he honestly thought he'd win. He had no idea what I had already gathered. No idea what I was planning. No idea that the handbook he loved to weaponize was about to become the thing that buried him. The HR meeting was supposed to be informal. That's what the email said. Just a quick chat. But anyone who has worked in corporate America knows that when HR wants a quick chat, something ugly is coming. I walked into the small conference room on the 9th floor. Sarah from HR sat at the table with a folder already open in front of her. Mark was there too, leaning back in his chair with this smug little smirk like he'd already won. Like the meeting was just a formality before they walked me out of the building. I sat down, keeping my face neutral. Sarah cleared her throat. We've received multiple reports about concerns regarding your communication style, collaboration approach, and disruptive behavior in meetings. I didn't look at her. I looked at him. He looked back at me, eyes glowing with confidence. He really believed he had this wrapped up. He really believed he could gaslight an entire company into thinking I was the problem. Sarah slid a paper across the table. These reports include 4 documented accounts. 3 of them were submitted anonymously. Of course they were. Anonymous was his favorite weapon. But then she added, and one from a named manager. Mark Stevens. He sat up straighter like he was proud. I took the paper without saying a word. There were bullet points under his name, lines and lines of absolute fiction. She frequently interrupts team members. She raised her voice in a meeting on February 12th. She refuses to follow direct instructions. She has made several coworkers uncomfortable with her tone. She became emotional and unstable when receiving feedback. Feedback. He meant the part where he told me to be quiet and pretty. But then, buried near the bottom of the page, was something new, something I hadn't expected, a line that made my stomach flip. She made an inappropriate comment to me in private on January 27th. I stared at that sentence. My throat tightened. That never happened, not even close. Sarah kept talking, but her voice faded in and out like fog. My ears were rushing with heat. Inappropriate comment. Me, to him. He watched me read it, eyes locked on mine, like he was waiting to see me break. That's when I realized something that hit me like a punch straight to the chest. This wasn't just a sexist boss trying to control me. This wasn't just him trying to silence me. He was trying to destroy my reputation. He wasn't just building a paper trail, he was fabricating one. I set the paper down slowly. That last claim, I never said anything inappropriate to you. He shrugged and said, everyone remembers things differently. My hands curled into fists under the table. He was calm, too calm. Like he'd rehearsed this, like he'd planned for this. And then he delivered the twist I never saw coming. He reached into his folder, pulled out a printed email, and slid it to Sarah. This is what she said, he announced. Sarah skimmed it. And her face changed. She looked uncomfortable, conflicted. I pulled the email toward me. Apparently, I had written him a message late at night saying, I hope you think about me the way I think about you. I wish things were different. My breath stopped, because that email wasn't just fake. It was styled exactly like my writing. It used phrases I actually used. It mirrored how my real emails were formatted. He had forged it. Perfectly. I felt the blood drain from my face. That was his plan. He wanted me labeled unstable. He wanted me painted as inappropriate. He wanted to turn me into the problem so he could fire me with cause. And the worst part, HR was buying it. Until I said 8 words that froze the room solid. I have recordings of everything, including that day. Mark's smirk vanished. Sarah blinked. Recordings? I looked straight at him and said, multiple, time-stamped. Backed up. Would you like to hear the one from February 12th? That was the moment his confidence cracked. The lie he had built so carefully, so maliciously, was about to fall apart, and he finally knew it. The meeting with HR ended in this weird, shaky silence. Sarah didn't say much after I mentioned the recordings. She just closed the folder very slowly, like she suddenly realized she'd stepped into something way above her pay grade. She said they would pause all performance review actions until they could evaluate new information. Mark didn't say a word. He just stared at me with this stunned, hollow look, like he couldn't believe I'd dared to fight back. When I walked out of that room, I didn't feel relieved. I didn't feel victorious. I felt something sharper, colder. I felt the clock start ticking. Because now that he knew I had recordings, I knew he would scramble to bury whatever he could. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, the employee handbook on one side, my notes on the other, and every recorded file neatly labeled in a folder named Insurance. I wasn't going to let him twist anything ever again. I played through the recordings one by one, listening carefully to every line, making a list of timestamps. Some were small comments, but others were gold, verbatim proof of discrimination, retaliation, intimidation, and in some cases, straight-up policy violations. But Exhibit 17, the meeting on February 12th, was the crown jewel. It was the recording where he told me to get over myself when I raised concerns about workload. It also contained the moment that would blow this entire thing wide open, his quiet and pretty comment. It was clear, loud, unmistakable. It wasn't something he said quietly under his breath. He said it in a room full of people, confident no one would ever challenge him, cocky, almost proud. I listened to that clip 5 times, making absolutely sure every word was audible. Then I organized my plan. Step 1. Request formal arbitration. Not internal HR. Not some internal investigation that leads nowhere. Arbitration meant outside legal counsel would get involved. It meant they had to follow protocol. It meant a full review of evidence. Step 2. Submit my full written rebuttal. I typed for hours, citing every page, every line, every clause he had violated. It was all factual, nothing emotional, no adjectives. Just their own policy turned against them. Step 3. Prepare every piece of evidence in multiple formats. Digital files, printed transcripts, a backup USB, a cloud copy, a private drive. If anything disappeared, I'd still have it. Step 4. Notify HR in writing that I would provide additional documentation upon request. That forced them to formally catalog every piece of evidence. If they lost something, that would be a legal problem for them, not me. And based on the way Sarah's hands shook when I said the word recordings, she knew it. Step 5. Stay silent around the office. No reactions, no comments, no hint that I was building a case that could collapse their entire chain of command. I went to work, did my tasks, avoided conversations, and waited. And during that waiting period, something strange happened. Coworkers, people who had stayed quiet before, started approaching me privately. One woman from another team whispered, "I'm glad you're standing up to him. He's done similar stuff to others." Someone else said, "Be careful, he hates when women push back." But then someone told me something that made my stomach twist. "He's been telling people you're obsessed with him, that you're unstable, that he's worried about you." My chest tightened. This wasn't just retaliation now. This wasn't just him trying to cover his tracks. He was building a narrative, one where he was the victim and I was the problem. He wasn't protecting his job. He was protecting his image. And that's when the real purpose of the forged email clicked into place. He wasn't just trying to get me fired. He was trying to discredit me permanently. That night, staring at my wall of notes, I realized I needed more than recordings. I needed to expose the deeper reason. The pattern, the thing he didn't think I knew about yet. And I did know. Because of the email I received that afternoon. From someone I never expected. It was only 2 sentences long. "You're not his first target. Check who left 6 months before you started." My hands froze on the keyboard. There was someone before me, someone who ran. Someone whose name he had erased from the narrative. And now, I was going to find out why. I didn't sleep that night. I kept rereading the anonymous email, those 2 short sentences that suddenly shifted the ground under my feet. "You're not his first target. Check who left 6 months before you started." It felt like someone had reached through the screen and grabbed me by the collar. Because I'd always felt like something about Mark's behavior was too practiced. Too smooth. Like he'd done this before. Like he already knew exactly how far he could push things without leaving fingerprints. So the next morning, I got to the office early enough that only the cleaning crew was around. I logged into the internal system and pulled up past staffing rosters. It took a while to track down the right department logs, but when I finally reached the roster from the year before I started, there it was. A name I'd never heard before, a woman I didn't recognize, Lena Hartman, senior analyst, same role I had, same team, reported directly to Mark. My stomach twisted. I clicked on her profile, but it had been stripped clean. No exit notes. No final review, no transfer, nothing. It was like someone had intentionally scrubbed the record, but I wasn't done. I switched to archived email directories, not to read messages, but to see metadata. Timestamps, volume, activity. And that's when I noticed something off. For her last 2 months at the company, her sent email volume plummeted. Then her meeting attendance activity sharply dropped. Then nothing, like she had vanished. Before I could dig deeper, someone walked in. I closed everything quickly, but my heart was racing. That name, Lena, stayed stuck in my mind all day. At lunch, I stepped outside into the cold Minneapolis air and started searching my phone. LinkedIn, old employee directories, data analytics groups. Then finally, I found her. Her profile photo looked tired, stressed, like she'd been holding her breath for a long time. She worked at a small firm in Rochester now. I hesitated for a full 10 minutes before sending a message. Hi, you don't know me, but I recently discovered we held the same role at Westline Analytics. I think what happened to me may have also happened to you. Would you be open to talking privately? I didn't expect a reply, but she responded in 3 minutes. Is this about Mark? My hands shook. Yes, I typed. I'm in arbitration with him now. A pause, then, he ruined my career. Call me, I called immediately. Her voice shook the entire time we spoke. She told me everything, things that made my skin crawl. He had done the same pattern with her. The same speak up more comments. The same dismissive behavior. Then the sudden shift, accusations of being aggressive, unstable, emotional. But then she said the part that sent chills through me. He forged an email from my account too. I nearly dropped my phone. She told me that when she tried to fight back, HR sided with him. They called her unprofessional. They made her sign a performance improvement plan. She had a panic attack in the HR lobby and quit the next day. And she said one more thing. He told people I had a crush on him, that I fantasized about him, that I was unstable. Does that sound familiar? My knees almost buckled. It was the exact same playbook. She paused before she continued, and her voice took on this flat, haunted tone. And the email he forged, the one they said I wrote late at night. He matched my tone so perfectly I started doubting myself. For a while I wondered if I actually had written it and forgotten. I leaned against a brick wall, shaking. He didn't just forge emails. He forged them convincingly. He studied us. He mimicked us. He weaponized our own writing styles against us. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't sloppy. This wasn't a one-off mistake. This was a tactic, a practiced one. And then Lena said the line that changed everything. You need to understand, Mark doesn't do this because he's insecure. He does it because he likes breaking people. He picks women who won't fight at first, then pushes until they snap or run. He wants to look like the calm, rational one while he dismantles them piece by piece. A cold rush went through me. This wasn't a workplace conflict. This wasn't even about power. It was something darker, calculated, rehearsed, personal. And I realized then that the forged email in my HR file wasn't sloppy or desperate. It was part of his pattern, part of who he was. And if Lena was telling the truth, and I believed every word, then Mark wasn't just wrong. He was dangerous. I didn't go back to my desk right away after talking to Lena. I sat in my car in the company parking lot with the engine off, staring at the steering wheel, feeling this numb, sinking heaviness spread through my entire chest. Everything she told me kept replaying in my head like a warning siren I couldn't shut off. He'd done this before. He'd done this intentionally. He'd done this because he wanted to. That night, I dug deeper. I wasn't just looking for evidence anymore, I was looking for a pattern. I pulled everything I could access. Old org charts, archived team directories, onboarding logs, resignation dates. I started noticing something I should have caught earlier. Every 6 to 12 months, a woman on his team left. Always a woman. Always quietly. Always with her file oddly incomplete. And every time someone left, Mark seemed to glide upward. More praise, more responsibility, more control. It didn't look like coincidence anymore. It looked like a system. But I didn't understand the why, the real reason, until I found the old departmental meeting recordings stored on the shared drive. Most were boring, but one from 2 years back caught my attention. In the corner of the screen, Mark wasn't leading the meeting. Someone else was, a woman, confident, sharp, respected. She was clearly his manager. I didn't recognize her name, Amanda Rowe. She spoke with authority. People listened to her. Mark sat stiffly beside her, jaw tight, eyes narrowed every time she talked. He wasn't hiding his irritation well at all. I kept watching, and halfway through the meeting, she corrected him on a data point. He forced a smile, but his face twitched. He looked humiliated, even though she wasn't rude, just professional. I paused the video. There it was, the seed. I searched her name. And that's when the true reason, the horrifying root of all this, finally surfaced. Amanda had filed a formal complaint against Mark before she left the company, not for harassment, not for discrimination, for insubordination and performance misconduct. I found only a summary, probably sanitized, but it was enough. He'd been written up for difficulty accepting direction from female supervisors and hostile pushback when corrected by women in leadership. The document said he became increasingly combative and unmanageable once she was promoted above him. He wasn't just threatened by women speaking up. He wasn't just offended by women correcting him. He couldn't handle women in positions equal to or above him, at all. And when Amanda left the company, quietly, without explanation, Mark slid into her role. It hit me like a punch. He learned from that experience, twisted it into something darker, and weaponized it. He wasn't afraid of women. He wasn't insecure around women. He wasn't clueless about how he came off. He hated women who challenged him. He hated women who were competent. He hated women who might rise higher than him. And instead of letting that insecurity swallow him, he turned it outward into a ritual. He studied his targets. He picked women who were smart and capable, women who might rise, women who might outperform him, women who reminded him of his former boss. Then he broke them down slowly, systematically, until they either quit or got pushed out. And every time one left, he looked like the stable one, the reliable one, the logical one. Every exit made him appear more calm and dependable, while the women he targeted left with wrecked reputations and gaps in their careers. His rise in the company wasn't despite the women he destroyed. It was because of them. And the forged emails, the character assassination, the lies to HR, the unstable label, they weren't accidents. They were his insurance policy, his blueprint. His entire career was built on making women appear irrational so he could look controlled. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something colder than anger. I felt fear. Because now I knew the truth. What he did to me wasn't personal. It was a pattern, a ritual, a strategy. He didn't want me quiet or pretty. He wanted me gone. Just like he wanted Lena gone. Just like he wanted Amanda gone. And he wanted to walk over the ruins of our careers like stepping stones to his own success. But for the first time in his entire pattern, he'd picked someone who documented everything. And I was done being quiet. Arbitration day felt nothing like the earlier HR meetings. It wasn't a chat or a performance review. It was a formal process in a neutral downtown office in St. Paul, with a long table, a certified arbitrator, company counsel, HR representatives, and Mark sitting directly across from me wearing a suit that looked one size too big for the panic he was trying to hide. I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't scared. I was prepared. The arbitrator began with procedural notes, then asked for evidence presentations. Company counsel spoke first, but the tone was already different. HR had softened their position. They didn't outright defend Mark the way I expected. Too much doubt hung around him now. Then it was my turn. I slid forward a binder, thick, neatly tabbed, color-coded. One copy for the arbitrator, one for opposing counsel, one for HR, and one for Mark. I watched his throat bob when he saw how many tabs there were. I began calmly. Tab 1, February 12th staff meeting, time-stamped audio. Includes explicit discriminatory language. I pressed play. There it was, his voice, loud and clear. Maybe if you'd stop acting emotional, just learn to be quiet and pretty and things will go smoother. HR shifted uncomfortably. Counsel scribbled notes. Mark's face drained of color. I continued. Tab 2, instances of retaliation following that meeting. Tab 3, Fabricated Accusations of Inappropriate Communication. Tab 4, The Forged Email. Company counsel frowned. We haven't verified forgery, I interrupted, steady and sure. Tab 4A contains metadata from the email server. Tab 4B contains proof I was not even logged in during the timestamp of the message. Tab 4C contains a cross-analysis of my documented writing patterns and the forged message. I didn't mention Lena by name, not yet. But what I did include was devastating. Tab 5, Historical Pattern of Female Team Departures with Incomplete Exit Documentation. HR flipped to that section quickly. I saw their eyes widen. Then came the final blow. Tab 6, Prior Disciplinary Notes for Mark Stevens citing gender-based insubordination. That one hit like a hammer, because it was real, documented, undeniable. Company counsel whispered something frantic to HR. Mark's hands curled into fists on the table. The arbitrator turned to him. Mr. Stevens, do you have a response to these exhibits? He snapped. He actually snapped, right there in the quiet arbitration room. This is ridiculous. She's manipulating all of you. She's unstable. She's obsessed. She twisted everything I said. It was the worst possible thing he could have done, because the moment he raised his voice, his mask slipped. The calm, logical persona shattered. And everyone in that room finally saw the man I'd been dealing with for months. The arbitrator cut him off sharply. Sit down, Mr. Stevens. He tried to speak again, but counsel grabbed his arm and whispered, Stop talking. Silence fell heavy across the table. The arbitrator took a moment, reviewed several tabs, then said plainly, Based on the evidence presented, the contradictions in managerial reports, and the documented pattern of conduct, I find in favor of the employee. I felt my lungs finally release. HR spoke next, voice small. We will be initiating a full internal review regarding Mr. Stevens' conduct, effective immediately. Counsel added, We would like to discuss a separation agreement with you, one that includes financial compensation and a formal letter of exoneration. I nodded. Not triumphantly, just firmly, because this wasn't a victory lap. This was survival. As we stood to leave, Mark glared at me with this hollow, furious look, like he couldn't comprehend how everything unraveled. But I looked back at him and felt nothing. Not anger, not fear, not satisfaction, just clarity. Because the truth was simple, he lost the moment he underestimated me. 3 weeks later, he was fired for cause. HR quietly reached out to Lena and issued a written apology for how her case was handled. An internal audit exposed everything he'd done to past employees. And I received a severance package big enough to let me walk away without looking back. On my last day, I passed his empty office. The blinds were half open, the desk cleared. The space finally looked harmless. I stood there for a second, then whispered to myself, Quiet and pretty, my ass, and I walked out.